All right, so let's move away from water to electricity. What are we on, stage 5 this evening? That's a total of about 10 hours without power on an unlucky day. Well, if you're watching SA tonight, right now, you're either not being load shed or you have an alternative power source. So what sort of backup power do you have? It's probably the best conversation starter in South Africa these days. Sadly, of course, it's an option for very few because not everyone can afford to pay. It is a big outlay. Let's discuss the options with Christy Bragg, a climate change leader and conservation biologist. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I think we're all having the conversation all the time saying, you know, what do we do? How do we transition? I've lost you. I hope you aren't being load shed. No, you're there. So, Christy, obviously, inevitably, if we start looking at backup power, it's going to cost us more. What are the most popular options now? Because I've got a sense that many households are moving off generators and looking at the solar inverter options. But you tell me.
Yeah, so at the moment there's a range of options, and it depends on which income bracket you fall in, what's available and accessible to you. So there's going off the grid, which is really quite a high capital investment. Not many people can afford that, and going off the grid means that you don't rely on Eskom at all. You just rely on solar or hydroelectric or wind or some sort of renewable energy option. Very few people can afford to do that, obviously, because it's high capital investment. There's the need for backup and storage systems, and there's need for a lot of green skills or technical skills that we don't have in this country to install and maintain solar infrastructure. So that's the high-end scale. The low-end scale that's where we need to be working. We need to be talking more about what's available for people, you know, that the vast majority of people in this country. So, I mean, there are things like inverters.
Okay, so I was going to say it's candles, and if you're lucky, a generator, which I think you can get for around 5,000 Rand. But then, of course, you're going to have to put diesel or petrol in it, which is not cheap these days. So talk to me about those entry-level options, and particularly greener options, because I think if we're looking at the future, hearing about the challenges of climate change, we've got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, so I think what we actually should be asking in terms of this country is asking people of South Africa what are their problems with load shedding. So, for example, a lady I met whose mother lives in the Eastern Cape, she says her mother doesn't care about load shedding because she's not reliant on Eskom. But her mother does care about the rising food price costs that is caused by load shedding. Another father in Khayelitsha told me that his children are scared of getting up in the morning. It's dark and cold, and they're scared because crime is increasing.
Yeah.
Another father told me that he has to buy drinking water for his household because load shedding is impacting water quality.
Yep.
So I think government needs to provide an enabling environment for funding solutions at a localized renewable energy center scale in order to address these things.
You talk about an enabling environment. We know that this year's budget speech said if you buy solar panels, just the solar panels, we'll pay up to, is it 25,000 Rand or 15,000 Rand? But after that, you're pretty much on your own. So that doesn't sound like enabling enough to me. Talk to me about what an enabling environment would be like.
I think it's a matter of, again, finding out what people need and addressing those issues. So, for example, it might mean a case of providing funding for accessing solar energy for your solar panel, for your powering your security cameras at a neighborhood watch group. It might be accessing funding for gas stoves, because that's what people are needing in load shedding. They're needing gas stoves for supper. They're needing lights, the LED, solar-powered charging lights. They need an inverter to power, the basic things. And I mean, if you look at an inverter, after doing some research on what a solar panel and a battery pack would charge, and it would charge. It's not going to charge your refrigerator. It's not going to charge your geyser. It's not going to charge your stove. It's going to be a laptop, some maybe your cell phone chargers and some lights.
Yeah.
And your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That will cost 12,000 Rand. So this is out of most of our income. brackets.
It's absolutely true. So you'd like to see more specific interventions to meet people where their needs are most acute, because of course, you know, load shedding does impact in different ways for different people, and the knock-on, of course, to our economy is massive. But we also have to use less dirty forms of electricity. I'm wondering if this crisis could be a bit of a blessing in disguise for our environment. If we continue with our households transitioning to alternative power, what could our future look like?
I think that's a very good point, that this represents an amazing opportunity for South Africa. Because if you look at the way we waste electricity, we waste it. And we all need to look at ourselves about how we consume energy and where we are consuming it and where we need to cut back. And we cannot, coal is very convenient. It's very convenient for us, but we need a slow, sustainable transition to renewable energy. And that is the opportunity waiting for us to take those bull by the horns and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening, Christy Bragg, a climate change leader and conservation biologist. And, you know, I think it was possibly the electricity minister or one of the experts who has spoken, saying that if the entirety of South Africa's geysers were shut off during peak times, we would save 4,000 megawatts of power. So a little bit that each household does can make a big difference. Let's move on.